these events is that we don't really get the chance to mingle afterward, before or afterwards as much, you know, when we're not in person, and it's such a shame. But hopefully for those of us who are inspired and excited by what we hear tonight, we can reach out and connect with one another, whether it's through the chat in the Zoom or some other way afterwards. Hopefully we can get in touch and keep whatever momentum alive that we build tonight. So as Reverend Carolyn said, you know, I come here from working with an organization, Trellis for Tomorrow, that's focused on food justice and community, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But I also come here as a member of the local spiritual assembly of the Baha'is of Lower Merion, and I wanted to start with a quote. I was hoping to share my screen, but that's okay. I will just say the quote, and maybe I'll put it later in the chat in case anybody wants.
You should be able to screen share. I made you the co-host.
Oh, I can. Great. Okay, let me see if I can get that. Because I do have. Oh, yes, you did. Thank you so much. All right. So hopefully, can you all see the screen? No, not yet. Hold on a minute. Okay. Can you see now? Yes.
Yes, we got you.
Great. Thank you. So this is one of my favorite quotes from the Baha'i writings. And for those of you that don't know of the Baha'i faith is a world religion that believes in the oneness of God, the oneness of religion, and the unity of mankind. And Baha'u'llah is the founder of the Baha'i faith, and this is from the Baha'i writings. And I chose this quote for two reasons. One, because every time I hear or read this particular piece of writing, it does something to me it just has a profound effect on me. I have this sort of visceral feeling and vision of what God was hoping for with respect to people coming together and co-creating a beautiful life. And it fills my heart with light when I think of this. And I feel like this is exactly the kind of thing that we saw over the course of the last year as we came together to support one another and to serve with one another. Certainly we saw tremendous hardship and tremendous sadness, but we also saw incredible light from the unity that was created in all of this sadness. So that's part of it. The other part it really pertains to food. And when I think about food, one of the things I think about food is that food is something that brings us all together. There is a relationship between food and unity. Food is where we convene. We break bread together, and certainly in pre-pandemic times for sure, and hopefully in post-pandemic times. That's the way that our culture unites. We share meals. And during the pandemic, this took a little bit of a different shape or form in that we had some unity around food. Many of us were individuals that when we would engage in service, even prior to the pandemic, we would be helping to bring food to those who needed it. That's something that many of us have done in our lives, and some of us more than others more regularly. But I think we can all say that those efforts really, really ramped up in the last year. And there were so many demonstrations and examples of how people worked hard and took on tremendous personal risk to feed their neighbors and to feed people who were in need. So, you know, food really brought us together and united us in a different kind of way throughout the pandemic. So that's just a little bit of inspiration from the Baha'i faith, and then coming at it from the Trellis for Tomorrow, our organization's side of things. We are an organization, as Carolyn said, that delivers hands-on programming in organic gardening, food justice, and environmental stewardship. And we do this in partnership oftentimes with organizations and community-based organizations, corporations, sometimes with other organizations that serve the community. And we are very blessed, for example, to work with Reverend Carolyn and the Bethel AME congregation, where they have incredible gardens that they work, and we partner with them to provide them with education, to provide them with seedlings, to provide them with soil, to help grow food that is then ultimately most of it donated to the community and to neighbors in need. And Reverend Carolyn has done some incredible things this year, in this past year, with multiplying the impact of that garden by creating victory gardens in the neighborhoods surrounding the church. And the impact of this is really goes to the heart of the other part of Trellis's mission, which is to foster resilience and compassion in individuals to help them build sustainable communities. And when we talk about sustainable, we mean socially, environmentally, and economically. And that's exactly what this partnership, that Reverend Carolyn has built, not only with Trellis, but with other organizations in the community, with all of their neighbors, everybody coming together to connect with each other and connect with the earth. So these are really, really beautiful examples of how we can come together as humans and care for one another and care for the planet, and for us all to prosper as a result of that. So with that, I'm going to turn to talking about our wonderful panelists today, who are going to talk with us more about faith, food, and justice. And I'm going to walk us through an introduction of each of our panelists. And hopefully I do you all justice, but please feel free to make any, to expand on anything I've said, or to correct me in case I might be wrong. But I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to just talk to you all about who we have with us this evening. So first we have Krista Barfield, who is the founder and owner of Viva Leaf Tea, a farm to cup tea brand, and Farmer John, a community greenhouse and CSA in Philadelphia. A healthcare professional turned farmer, Christina is a 33-year-old mother of two and lifelong Germantown resident. It was 10 years into her career in healthcare administration when she realized her work-life balance was unhealthy. She resigned from her job just weeks before she turned 30 years old. And it was important for her to take back her life, health, and happiness, not only for herself, but for her family as well. After a solo trip to Martinique
an idea of what's going
in January of 2018, she returned home inspired to connect with the land, plant life, and social issues that heavily impact Black and Brown communities. Her business, a reincarnation of her healthcare career. Her business is a reincarnation of her healthcare career. Since 2018, she has developed Earthborn brands owned by her parent company, Life Leaf Organic Farms. Her two original ventures, Viva Leaf Tea Company and Farmer John Community Supported Agriculture, are based in regenerative agricultural values with the goal of traceable and transparent origins from 100% organically doped foods. Krista has also begun expanding her hemp farming knowledge with the goals of destigmatizing cannabis and impacting regulation related to unfair incarceration surrounding the plants. So hopefully everybody, Christine, I think you waved, but can you wave again and say hi? Welcome. So Krista, we'll come back to you. And I'd love to have you talk a little bit more after I introduce the others. Okay, next we have Reverend Alan Breimer. Am I saying that correctly?
Breimer.
Breimer, sorry,
Yes,
I apologize.
No problem.
Reverend Alan Breimer co-founded and led the nonprofit Farm Church in Durham, North Carolina, successfully through its critical first 5 years. Farm Church is now is a new worshiping community, gathering spiritual people around the care of soil, growing food, the breaking of bread, and is committed to addressing food security issues of our region. Alan is also an adjunct faculty member at the Kentucky Community and Technical College System. And prior to that, he was the pastor of First Presbyterian Church of Somerset in Kentucky. Reverend Breimer, did I get that correct? Good. Okay, wonderful. Looking forward to hearing from you as well. We also have with us Rabbi Justin David, has served as the rabbi of the congregation B'nai Israel for the last 18 years. Before moving to Northampton, he was assistant rabbi Hadass Israel congregation in Washington, D.C., after having been ordained by the Jewish Theological Seminary of America. He's the author of Longing, Jewish Meditations on a Hidden God, and received the Human Rights Hero Award from TRIA, a rabbinic call for human rights. Justin, did I do that okay? Did I get everything right? Did I say it fairly right? Okay, good. Wonderful. Okay, and next we have with us, I believe, Robin Emmons. Robin is an award-winning social entrepreneur and visionary who founded the nationally recognized nonprofit organization, So Much Good, Inc., which helped spark the now thriving urban farming movement. She's been recognized by Athena International, CNN Heroes, 50 Most Influential Women, 25 Women in Wellness to Watch, and covered by multiple national and local media outlets. Robin spent the last decade focusing on empowering marginalized communities to leverage their political and social power to improve their neighborhoods and their lives through the nonprofit she founded, while simultaneously delivering her message in the power of leading through service to a broad range of stakeholders. She's also an accredited and certified transformation life coach who works with individuals and businesses to assist them in gaining greater clarity, focus, and purpose in their lives and businesses. Robin, are you with us? Checking. We were having a little bit. Okay. Not sure
I
that
didn't
she's
see her as I scrolled
okay.
through, so.
Not sure she's joined
Yep.
yet. Okay.
And friends, I'm just going to quickly mute all. That will mean more people who are joining will be automatically muted when they come in. And Jennifer, you'll just have to unmute yourself once again. So let me just do that
no
quickly.
problem.
All done.
Okay, great. All right. Okay, lastly, we have Melissa Reynoso. Melissa has over 20 years of experience serving the nonprofit and education sectors in Philadelphia and beyond. Currently a middle school teacher at Eugenio Maria de Hostos School. She teaches English, literature, Spanish, and social studies. As a teacher in a public Montessori school in North Carolina, she explored childhood and adolescent development. She also taught English as a second language at John Paul Jones Middle School in the District of Philadelphia. Her commitment to youth and community-centered organizations led her to serve nonprofits such as City Year, Philadelphia Youth Network, and Congreso de Latinos Unidos in Philadelphia. So welcome, Melissa. Nice to see you. Thank you for being here. So hopefully I didn't butcher anything too much in that. And so please, if I did, feel free to correct me. I try to be accurate, but sometimes it's not always easy. So we're gonna kick this panel off by talking about something sort of personal and hopefully something that you don't mind sharing with us. But we're interested to know from our wonderful speakers how you all felt that your faith guided and influenced your work over the last year. And before you answer that, I'll just share a quick thought, at least from my perspective in the Baha'i faith. The Baha'i perspective is that any work or profession that's carried out in the spirit of the service to humanity is considered the worship of God. And so basically this means that labor is elevated to the station of worship. And I know that for me, that particular perspective, whenever I remember to come back to it, is so helpful in sometimes issues within the workplace or challenges that we have that, you know, we aren't always quite sure what the right path is. But when I reorient myself to this direction of a profession being carried out in the spirit of service to humanity, it seems to always answer my questions. And I've found that to be really comforting and guiding over the last probably 10 years of my life. So anyway, I'm interested, and we're interested to hear how this has influenced you all this year. And I don't really have an order. So if anybody is interested in just speaking up and starting, please go ahead. Or I'll call on you. One or the other.
Are
can
you
go.
asking for responses only from the people on the panel or for the group in total?
Yeah, Karen, this is for people on the panel at this
Okay.
point, but later on we'll have some Q&A and discussion.
Okay, I'll jump in. The middle school teacher will jump in. This may be an unpopular answer, but it didn't at all.
Mm.
You know, there was no faith involved whatsoever. I'm a brand spanking new member, so I am kind of. My dad calls I'm a recovering Catholic, so I just rejoined. I'm beginning a new fellowship at West Kensington Ministry, and I mean brand new. I'm a COVID-19 person who came into it, so it has zero connection, or so I thought at the beginning. But now that it's been a year of doing this, it has come in full circle. It is coming full circle, and there's a lot more faith than what I thought it was, but not. It was not an impetus, you know. It was not an initial thing. It's becoming now, and now I can connect the dots and go back, but it had none whatsoever until now that I see back. I'm like, oh my God, it has everything to do with it. So that's that. I just want to jump in, Jennifer, if you don't mind. My co-chair of Norris Square Neighborhood Project, which is the person that I work with, is here with me. His name is Greg Wright. I had asked Pastor Todd, and he said it was okay. We travel together. We'll do this together. We're panelists together. So if it's okay for him to introduce himself just real quick as part of the
Sure,
panel.
absolutely. And also I
you.
read about the mission of Norris Square, and maybe
Yeah.
he can say a quick thing about that too.
Yes.
Hi, everyone. My name is Greg Wright. I serve, as Melissa said, as co-chair of the board. The mission of North Square Neighborhood Project is really to connect the community. We have a focus on arts, youth, and culture, specifically with the Puerto Rican and Latinx side of our youth. And to give a quick example, I was introduced to the organization while taking students in North Philadelphia to the gardens. And upon my first time visiting the gardens, I was first introduced to the Afro-Caribbean culture. And as an adult, I did not know that about the slave trade and how the transatlantic slave trade stopped at the island of Puerto Rico and the merging of the cultures that happened there. So I know that we're talking about faith, food, and justice today. And a lot of it is intersectional. You have food justice, you have racial justice, you have justice in our education system that's not teaching us our history. And so a lot of what I look towards is learning our history, connecting our roots. And so for the question that was just asked in terms of faith and this work, I was taught that to minister means to serve. So the number one thing that I want to do with my 9-to-5 job as I serve the youth in my community of North Philadelphia, the number one thing I want to do after I get off of my job is to serve my community and the students that I work with. So the biggest lesson I've learned from my pastor at Praise and Glory Tabernacle, Philip Whiteside, when you are a minister, when you are out here, it's not about being upfront all the time. It's how well do you serve the people? And with this work that's been taken over during this pandemic, I thank God that I've been in a position to serve the people, whether it's through the food programs that we do at North Square Neighborhood Project, getting food to the community, whether it's my job with the city, and as I've been able to pivot to running food pantries and food distributions to my North Philadelphia community, it all goes back to servitude. And that's my lesson in all of this.
That's wonderful. Thank you both for sharing. So great to hear. And I appreciate the honesty, Elisa, of your perspective. So why don't we move on? I'm going to call on somebody just so we can avoid any confusion. Krista, since you were first up on my list, do you want to share?
Yes. So I want to make sure I'm answering every part of your question. Do you mind reposing it?
Yeah, no, really, it's fairly simple. Just talk a little bit about how your faith, if it did, guided and influenced your work over the last year during the pandemic.
Yeah, honestly, when I look at faith, I grew up as a Baptist Christian, and when I look at faith, it is deeply rooted in service. It's all about making sure that our people to the right of us and to the left of us are taken care of. And what I have always done for 10 years prior to me becoming a farmer, I worked in healthcare. And so that's everything has to do with giving of yourself. And it really is a labor of love, and especially on the administrative side, because you're making sure that people can pay for the care that they're receiving from the clinicians. We're making sure that when they're checking in, that they're having a good experience, and trying to make sure that, if they do owe a lot of money on their deductible, that they understand it, like taking the time to explain it. So being as though I'm no longer in that side of healthcare, I do like to say that now I am, like you mentioned in my bio, what I do now is most certainly a reincarnation of my healthcare career, because I'm telling people, I'm helping people on the preventative side, and also, the reactive side of telling them, like, what food you can be eating and what you should be doing so that you can help alleviate these ailments that you may have, or avoid them. And so it's all in service. It's all deeply rooted in that. And we're called to be of service to each other. So I would have to say, absolutely, especially during this pandemic, is people have been looking for alternative ways to take care of themselves, to protect themselves, to build their immune systems. And with my tea company and the fact that I grow herbs, and it's been really nice for people to reach out and for me to have information for them, and to give them tips and tricks, or for them even just to come patronize our store. Yeah, and it's been really great, and just teaching people how to grow their own herbs at home and so forth. So absolutely, service and faith go hand in hand, and it shows in the work that we do.
Thanks, Krista. Yeah, we have some partnerships with natural food stores and retailers, and they said that this year was incredible, that people were really, really focused on the preventative side of their health and diets, which is a wonderful thing to hear. Thank you. Okay, I think I have up next Reverend Alan Breimer.
Thank you. Hi, my name's Alan, and I'm the pastor of Farm Church. And I actually think my answer to your question is backwards. I think for me, the question is the other way. It's how did doing this thing inform my faith? What ended up happening for me is I kept having this flashback to the Indiana Jones movie where he goes and tries to find the Holy Grail, and he goes through all the trials through the cave, and he gets to the end and there's this impossible chasm to jump over. He's like, oh, it's a leap of faith. And then he just sticks his leg out and he falls off into the chasm and lands on a bridge that he can't see. You remember that scene? That is my everyday for the past 6 years. And, I used to get in my pulpit at my tall steeple downtown First Presbyterian Church that I used to serve and tell my congregation, you can trust God with your life. It turns out it's true. Like, you can. And so it feels more like this got started because of some sort of faith that I thought I had. But this thing ended up teaching me what faith is really about. Like, it has really informed how deeply I believe and how deeply I can trust. Yeah, I think that's my best answer to that question.
That's a wonderful answer. Yeah, I bet you many of us can relate to that, and I love the way you position that. Okay, we are moving on to Rabbi Justin David.
Hi, everyone. I just want to first thank Rabbi David Ackerman for inviting me here. And I want to say how grateful I am to all the presenters here to learn from all of you. Very briefly, I'll just say that in Jewish tradition, faith is often expressed precisely through service and action. And in this particular year that has been filled with so much pain and disruption, I would say that with our farm work, and I should mention that the reason why I'm here is because our synagogue congregation in Israel has a farm on its property, Abundance Farm, whose stated purpose is to grow food for our local food pantry, which is with which we share a parking lot, but over a period of about 8 or 10 years has really blossomed into a community resource and nexus point for all kinds of things. But I would say in the past year, I think our farm work has really helped to galvanize and in some ways radicalize the community. The farm in our community, the staff and the conversations and the work that's there always winds up introducing issues and initiatives to the congregation that push the envelope about who we are and what we do and what it means to be a community of faith and a community of connectedness. And this year with the pandemic, the ways the pandemic has exposed systemic racism, the murder of George Floyd, and all the ways in which these inequalities have been exposed, not only nationally, but in our own community, the farm work has been the place where we've been able, one of the places where we have been able to ask ourselves the question, well, who are we really and what are we really doing? And that has resulted in commitments from the farm as well as the congregation, commitments which have been brewing for a long time to explicitly and actively strive to be anti-racist organizations. I'm not going to pretend that we're there. We are having the conversations, we're doing the work, it's step by step, but it is a radical shift, I think, from how we've seen ourselves in the past, where we've trusted in our own good intentions and benevolence. And now I think we're in a place where we're really trying to not just educate ourselves, but ask ourselves the question, how can we be more deeply and authentically connected? And I'll just say the other way in which that's been really important the past year is that despite the separation, the physical separation imposed by the pandemic, since our farm, since people depend on our food from our farm, and in the summer, during harvest season, people, clients of the Survival Center come to our farm for a Pick Your Own program. The farm work and the farm educational programs have been ongoing and really mostly the only in-person things that we do because they can be outside and people can be distanced. And so it's been a place of great purpose and comfort in that, you know, in this time when we're so confined and so restrained, here's a place where we can take action. And for a Jewish community, that ability to act is very, very satisfying.
Thank you. Yeah, you know, most of you touched on some things that relate to the next question that I had for you, which is, you know, why is the work that you're doing, that you've done in this last year, you know, what about that is so critical in this moment in time for society and for humanity? And I think, Krista, you know, you touched a little bit on the concept of wellness and health and preventive care. And Rabbi Justin, you know, you're talking about action and like the power of taking action. And, you know, a couple of you talked about service and just how service connects you to your faith and to God and to just feeling a sense of reason and rationality or something within the craziness of what's happened in the last year. Are there other reasons why you feel like, you know, the work that you're doing is so important at this exact moment in time, what we're facing as society? Are there things about what's happening now that you feel like this work is just super critical in ways that maybe it wasn't a year and a half, 2 years ago?
I'd like to jump in. I think for me, it's always been super important. What we have right now is urgency. Other people can see how important it actually is. And so we have a platform to encourage people to, you know, get their hands in the dirt and reconnect to the land and farming and so forth. And then with that platform, with everybody wanting to garden and seeds being scarce and, you know, garden centers being overran on weekends and so forth, especially as we move closer to spring, what we have is an opportunity to have, the ears of more people that have interest in not only growing food, but and not only having, relationships with their local farmers, but also understanding why it's so important. So something that's really big for initiative for Farmer Join is explaining why organic food specifically is. No, I'm not muted. Can everyone hear me? Oh, okay. Okay. So organic growing practices specifically, and not only that, regenerative growing practices are really important for us, and helping farmers that do farm conventionally get connected to people, organizations that can help them transition and help them fund that transition, because organic food it's just way more nutrition dense, and communities like ones that I live in and ones that I focused on helping are Black and Brown, which are plagued with health disparity because of access and affordability of, great organic regeneratively farmed food. It's just not really, it's not here. And the options for fruit and vegetables, while you can travel to go get them, they're still not readily available. We have corner stores everywhere. So it's really important right now, while we have this platform, that all of us use it to reach out to every corner, not even just the underserved communities. Everyone can benefit from eating organically and regeneratively, and that is the message that we push out to everyone, and giving more options for people to understand that their health can significantly be improved after eating these, better foods for you on an ongoing basis.
I'm kind of jumping in and echoing what Krista just said. For those of us in North Philadelphia, Black and Brown, female, women, this is not new. This is not new. What is new is the lens, the spotlight, the food scarcity and food injustice is not new to the Black and Brown community whatsoever. We have been, Norris Square Neighborhood Project has been in the community. So Norris Square is in the middle of North Philadelphia towards the east side. So it's towards Fishtown. We're fighting gentrification hardcore right now. But this organization has been around since 1973. And it didn't start as a food justice organization. It started more as a after school, and we did guerrilla farming. We took over, before my time, but we took over some of the land, some of the vacant lots that were like heavy drug use. And these moms, all women, by the way, all Black and Brown women, took over this land, and they cleaned it up, and it was like a three-pronged approach where they kept their boys busy so they wouldn't get in trouble. The police wouldn't stop them because they're just hanging out in the corner. They would be cleaning the spaces. Once they were clean, well, now what do? Well, we made it into gardens and reminiscent of Puerto Rican culture. But it started as a gardening organization. It was not about food at all. We partnered up with Pennsylvania Horticultural Society, and they provided us with a whole bunch of stuff. And it was gardening, beautification for the most part. And then little by little turned into food, and we have garden beds that we rent for a ridiculous number, like $5 a year or something like that. It's a nominal fee, more to have access to the space. So that's not how it started, but it became that because of the food scarcity, because we are a food desert in this neighborhood. We had one supermarket in about a 3-mile radius, which is Acme, and we have to walk because the train doesn't go by. We had one that just closed down a week ago. It'd been here for 30 years. So these are the things that we have been experiencing for the last 50 years. The pandemic just spotlighted, and things I've never seen before, like West Kensington Ministry gives out hundreds of pounds of food a week. We never had that before. But I just want to make sure that this is not new. This is not new at all. What is new is how we're looking at it, how we're approaching it, how we're talking about this. I am in a panel right now where I look at all of you guys, and I look very different than most of you. And I am from a whole different neighborhood than most of you. But it is affecting everyone big time, but it's not a new thing. We're just approaching it differently because more people are paying attention. So I'm not sure if I'm answering the question, but I just wanted to
No, absolutely. you
what
are.
Krista just mentioned. This may be new to some people. It's not new for us. What is good and is new and is good is this reconnection to the land. I was born and raised in a third world country. I didn't know I was eating organic until I came here. Like, oh, that's organic. That's just how I eat. We just have tomatoes and eggplants in the yard. I didn't know I was recycling because I have my own, mason jar. Oh, that's called recycling. Like, oh, that's just what my grandmother does. Tea is never in a bag. It's something you make from the herbs in the yard. So these are the things that are just coming back. And just to close this, I'm a Montessori trained teacher. And one of the things that Dr. Montessori said in her teachings, a very Christian woman, was there's a connection between the hand and the land. If you can touch it, you can grow it, you can feel it, this is why children learn how to write, like this is with a pencil, not with not a computer. So when you touch the dirt, when your hands are in the dirt, there's a direct connection, and I just this is kind of disconnected and disjointed, but I just wanted to say those things.
And if I could just add to one thing that's so important with the gardens right now during this time, what we see as critical is the need for socialization. During this time, we have had to socially distance from one another. And something that's important that Melissa said was that something about home. And one thing that's always brought out at our gardens when we're gardening with our groups is that they come here because it reminds them of home. No matter how many buses they have to get to, they're at our gardens because it reminds them of home. It reminds them of their foodways. And that connection right there is so important because it allows you to root yourself and it allows for some form of healing, I believe. And one thing that's very interesting is when we're talking about food access, she kind of pointed to it, but when you have these food distributions, it's the same folks over and over again. And that's one thing that I've noticed. So when we are gardening and right now we're actively applying for grants so that we can expand our gardening practices and our farms so that more people can have access. We're trying to make sure that we're taking into account what we observe in the community. So when we do have our farm stands, which are youth led, that they're low cost produce so that we're selling a pound of things for $1 for folks, just so that they can have easy access to it. But at the same time, we're making sure our youth are getting their entrepreneurial skills so that they can continue learning and growing as they're putting forth the work.
That's great. Speaking to my heart. How about the rest of you? Do the others have any thoughts on?
I'll jump in and just add, I think, two little things. One is, I think it's important right now because we have seen how the pandemic compromised and exposed the fragility of our food systems. And it also exposed our profound dependence, complete dependence on that food system. I think teaching resilience and the ability to grow your own food and minimize your dependence on that system is a move of strength. And I think that's one of the reasons all of this work is really important. The second thing is that I'm coming to the conclusion that in a season when there was a time when when information was difficult to access, and a lot of our religious traditions were built around having a preacher or a rabbi or a teacher who was the point person for teaching us how to get information and teaching us how to be faithful. But now and then we had communities. We had great communities built to go to that one place and get that source of good information. Now we have an abundance of information and really weak community. And I really think that what is really important in this work right now is that we build community. As a preacher, I was taught to be a content generator, but the world does not need more content. And so I find myself sort of functioning now as a content curator and trying to build a community, a robust community that can come and curate good content that is spiritually informative with me. So I think both of those things, building food system resilience and personal independent food resilience, but also building community around good source of good material. I think that's why this work is important right now.
That's fantastic. Rabbi, did you have something you wanted to add to this before we open it up for questions?
I'll just say from our experience, one thing that we find in our farm is that it's a point for all kinds of people to come and connect, whatever the program is, whether it's a work day, whether it's a harvest time, whether it's a pick your own, whether it's school groups coming. And one of the things that we found to our great delight is that people will take part in our programs who often don't feel like they belong anywhere. And at the start of this pandemic, very sadly, there were 3 young people in our community who, unconnected to each other for different reasons. I'm sorry, there's a, I'll just say a trigger warning here for those who are deeply involved in mental health issues. 3 young people took their own lives, and in a space of a very narrow piece of time. And then, and the farm, because it kept on going and because we were able to have people be together and interact under COVID safe conditions, was one of the only places for particularly young people to come and connect with each other. And so I think that just highlights how sort of what new dimensions of and possibilities for interpersonal connection and healing and solidarity that, you know, some kind of food justice farm project, however it's envisioned, can sort of build community with us.
Thank you for that. Yeah. Well, if it's okay with our panelists, I'd love to allow the attendees and participants in today's group to ask you questions about your work and just open it up. It's about 5 of 8. I know we got started a little late, so hopefully the panelists don't mind hanging on, you know, maybe for an extra 5 minutes or so. Okay, great.
And just so folks are aware, Pastor Cavanes has put in the chat the websites of the panelist organization. So I know we didn't do a big debrief on the work that they do, but feel free to take a look at those while we continue the conversation.
Feel free to just, I think the group is small enough if you want to unmute yourself to go ahead. Anybody has, I feel like somebody had a question a little bit earlier. Is there anybody on, you know, from the attendee side of things that has gotten involved in some sort of food growing, gardening initiative as a result of the pandemic, or gotten more involved in something than maybe you previously were? And if you did, would you be willing to share that experience with others? For those of you on the panel, how did you find it in terms of engaging people at this time in the work that you're doing? Was it more difficult? Was it easier? Did you have any issues around that? Can you talk a little bit about that? Yeah, go ahead.
I'll speak to that. We grew more produce and logged more volunteer hours during the pandemic than all years combined, previous years combined. And so, you know, I remember standing out in the garden last spring and I looked up, it was 11 a.m. on a Tuesday. It was like, oh, that teacher would be in school right now. That kid would be in school right now. Like there are so many people who are so much more available and motivated. You know, our work accelerated when when the pandemic hit, because we could, most churches were handicapped or paralyzed because they were building dependent. We have no building, we meet in the garden. So we were able to keep meeting with masks on, socially distanced, wash hands. We could do all of those things and just keep working. And so we had, again, we grew more than we've ever grown before, and had more volunteer hours than ever before. We should have a pandemic more often.
No, let's not do that. There is a question from Linda. Let me just grab
Yes.
that.
My
Do
question
you
is,
want me to
what do you
read it, Linda, or do you want to go ahead?
I was going to read it and answer it. My
Great.
question is, what do you do to help people when it's winter, when you can't grow anything? So we have very limited growing space. We also have two spaces. One is for our youth to learn gardening techniques and gardening strategy, how to grow food. And the other one is, we call them campesinos, which is a Spanish word for farmer or countryside people. So we have very limited space of growing. What we did experience was a exponential growth in visitors to the garden every time we opened them. We would have like people trickling in, 1, 2, 3. Now it's in the dozens. Our cleanup days used to be us. Now it's like a waiting list. I have to turn people away because of COVID restrictions. You can only have so many. But yes, we do have a lot of people coming in. We also have chickens. We have 5 chickens that lay our eggs, and they became like the attraction. So that was great. We had a lot more people. Like someone said earlier, it was the only place you can be with other people and not be breaking any of the rules in Philadelphia. So you have your mask coming in. Our beds are about 6 feet long. So one on each end, they're 6 feet apart. There you are. So in the winter, we have a lot of, we spend a lot of time putting our beds to sleep, so that takes time. Taking care of a garden is massive. It's a beast. So during those days that there's nothing to grow, and Greg can speak more about this. He's part of a program where something about seeds, and he can talk about this in a minute. So what we did to keep people engaged, we would do, especially our youth, we would do Zoom training. So like how to cook with some of the herbs that you were growing back in the days, or what are the things that grow even in the, even if it's really cold, what can you do instead? Or we had at one point a while ago canning and jar food. It was, I'm from a city, I don't really know how to do any of that stuff, so that was cool. So just teaching people in general like how to take care of the earth. We also have an arts side that involves kind of gardening to a little bit, so we kind of lean heavily onto the arts piece until the garden comes back. And the garden is coming back right now, which is interesting because the gardens don't wait. It's March, it's happening. We don't have a garden manager right now. Earth doesn't care. We're growing food. So that's the beauty of it. It's like an urgency, but it's almost like a hurry up and wait kind of thing. So that's that. And Greg, if you want to talk about the seeds program, that would be great.
I'll briefly talk about the seeds program. It's a new program with another neighborhood farm, which gets back to my original point of connecting gardeners with their roots through growing heirloom seeds and cultivating that seed. So that's a program that I'm doing right now as I connect to my roots, and we're growing a seed bank for others. To answer the question related to winter, the city of Philadelphia has stepped up through our hunger relief organizations to provide individuals boxes of food. So on a weekly basis, you can go to a variety of places to get your food. And Melissa has stepped up with West Kensington Ministries. I've stepped up with my school on the other side of North Philadelphia. But yeah, winter is difficult. And if you don't have the proper greenhouse growing capabilities, you have to be creative and pivot. And that's what we've done personally to make sure that our communities remain fed.
Thank you very much. So we have a couple of additional questions. And one is the next one I was going to ask you. So I'm going to actually start with that. And Dave, I promise we'll get to your question about soil health and how we deal with soil health that's challenged in areas that, where the soil's been compromised. But before we do, just in case people have to jump off, the important question I think is, how do people get started if they don't have something like this? Can you guys give some advice for what they might do?
Yeah, I'll start off. We because you know, in Western Massachusetts, even though it's actually a place that's rich with farms and a lot of green space, it's not at all intuitive that a synagogue would start a farm or even a garden. It's a little bit more widespread now, but I think it starts with tapping into the passion and the yearning that have been expressed by all the different panelists for all the different reasons that we'd want to be out in the dirt growing food or helping to grow food or facilitating an alleviation of food justice. And in our case, it started out with a person about 12 years ago for whom this was his passion. And like all of us, he looked around at the world and didn't like what he saw. And he felt really strongly that starting a garden on our excess synagogue property, and a lot of houses of worship have that extra side, side land or front land that's not used for anything. He said, well, what if I start a garden there? And he did, and it just flourished. And once we had that, people from all over the community were coming out of the woodwork to ask us about it. When we made it a formal farm, thanks to my colleague, Rabbi Jacob Fine, about 8 years ago, that's when really people started coming out of the woodwork. So I think what happens is you tap into this yearning, you act on it, you find people who are into it, who are willing to go out there and dig the mulch in March when it's still cold, and that leads to all kinds of connections to other people and opportunities that no one would have imagined at the start.
Thank you.
I'll chime in.
Yeah, go ahead, please. Yeah, please.
When we started, we moved to Durham, North Carolina, sight unseen, basically. We didn't know a soul. And so we just started telling the story, our startup story, to everyone who would listen. And eventually people started going, I got 5 acres. I got 10 acres. I got 40 acres. Land was raining out of the sky. And the thing is that there's land everywhere. It's everywhere. And the question is, who's got it and who's willing to share it? And so a part of it is just telling the story. One of the things that we were committed to at the beginning was to not own land. We were both pastors of churches with buildings, and the building was a boat anchor. It was soaking up so many resources. So we sort of promised ourselves that we would never have a building and would never own the land, that we'd find the partnerships with people who own land, who would get the vision, catch the vision, believe in it. It would forward their values in the world, and they would want to be a part of it. And so that has remained true. It's still, that's the story of our success, is that we didn't get under debt. The other thing is, you don't have to be the farmer even. You can go find a garden, go find a farm where you can volunteer and make a friend and believe in their work and contribute and volunteer for their work. And then take a friend, and then take a couple of friends, and then take a few friends. And before you know it, you've got a little church or a little synagogue or a little mosque meeting on somebody else's farm, and they love it. So I think there are a variety of ways to get at the land and to get to this work. But you don't have to own it, and you don't have to run it.
I just want to jump in for 2 seconds, Jennifer. I'm so sorry.
Please, no, Melissa, please.
Mr. Breimer mentioned something about not owning the land, which is quite a contrast with us in Kensington. We are obsessed with owning the land. And the reason for it is because it has been land that has been abandoned for years, nobody ever wanted it. And the cycle of moving, suburban, urban cycle, we're in the coming back cycle, where we are being gentrified in steroids, on steroids. It's insane what's happening in Fishtown, Kensington. So we have been stewards of this land since 1973, and all of a sudden we have found ourselves kind of fighting land that nobody wanted. Buy one get 3 free back in 73, And now is we want it, and that's how gentrification creeps in and displaces us yet again. And as we all know in this group, even though you're not necessarily Black and brown, but historically Black and brown people have been displaced and not owning because we don't own the land. So we are deliberate on owning the land that we occupy. And if we don't, for whatever reason, we're going to figure it out. And thankfully, we have deed and title to most of the parcels that we garden, but we still have a couple, pockets here and there. But it is very intentional. It is deliberate to sit on land that we own, because that's how you empower your people. When you own where you're sitting, you get to, no one gets to tell you, you got to go. So gentrification, that's kind of, it's a nice way to fight gentrifiers with garden and food. Here's a flower and the pumpkins. But yeah, for us, it's very much the opposite. We are intentional in this and owning this land thing.
Yeah, that's a really important and helpful point for all of us to be thinking about. And at the same time, I think it's also important to realize that we wouldn't want land ownership necessarily to stand in the way of doing gardening if there's a way to partner and make that happen. But that, to your point, Melissa, there are other reasons and additional layers to why that land ownership is so important in certain situations. And we're familiar and connected to those as well. I'm going to try to wrap us up here a little bit. I know that Reverend Carolyn and the team that put this together have some announcements they want to make about some upcoming service days in Lower Merion. But before that, I just want to recap from the chat. If you guys haven't been following it, there's been some discussions. And I know, Dave, I mentioned coming back about the soil. So real quickly, is there anybody on the panel that wants to just speak quickly to strategies that we can use to help remediate soil issues in places where the soil may have been compromised by either industrial or other farming or other things that may have happened? You guys have any thoughts on that you want to share? Krista, I think you're saying something.
Yeah, I was trying to unmute.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yes, absolutely. So soil health is super important. It's the genesis of everything that farmers do, gardeners do, and it starts with, and it really is the key to nutrient dense food. And it really is how we treat it, what's in it. So as far as remediation, I believe in not tilling and not causing any more harm to the earth in any space that you're on. If you're in a little garden box, I believe in mixing your own soil and learning how to mix soil. And I'm always open to talk about soil with anyone, and water, because it's as important, watersheds in our community. I get really excited about this topic. But yeah, we have to just stop using everything that we're using in our everything, all these products that are at different stores. And so, I mean, it's really bad, and digging in the soil is really bad. We have to just take more care of all the organisms that's in the soil, and have more respect for the microorganisms and kind of let them do their thing. And it really is unique to the space. So remediation is different for, depending on if it's a farm that has been, farmed conventionally with large tractors for years, or if it's a small little gardening space in someone's backyard. It kind of, the action that we take to make the change is different depending on the situation. But please, for anyone that has any questions about that, definitely reach out to me personally. I would love to field those questions and get you some resources.
Thank you, Krista. And those that I know that Reverend Carolyn put the URLs for the organizations in the chat, but for those panelists, you don't mind if you're willing to put your email address in. There's a lot of questions now, and I don't think we're going to be able to get to all of them, but just know that there's some questions about, how can we motivate people to engage, to look at opportunities with vacant land and land that might be available in our communities. There's questions here. I'm just trying to read them quickly. Let's see. There was a information about an organization. It's called Bean Bags for Good. that Jane has provided information and also some information about some efforts in Lower Merion, which I think might be a good segue into, and I'm not sure whether it's Reverend Carolyn or Todd or who is going to talk about that, but I think we do want to announce some things with respect to Lower Merion.
Yeah, and one, I want to thank all of our panelists, and I want to thank Jennifer for helping to moderate and move this along, as well as the partner organizations who have been planning this. It has been phenomenal. We are going to kind of distill a lot of the information that went through this. We're recording this. We'll save the chat. All the information that we want to get in your hands, we will be sending out a follow-up email. I posted a Google form because we're going to have 2 volunteer work days on April 18th and 25th. Note the dates. Those are Sundays, even though in the form I need to fix it. I had listed Saturdays, but they're actually, the work days are on Sunday afternoons, the 18th and 25th of April. We are going to gather as many folks who are able and willing. We have sites. If you don't have your own community garden at your community of faith and you want to work in one to help another community, we will help you find a place. As someone who has 3 raised beds here at Gladwin Presbyterian Church, we can find work for you. My back will thank you very much. We will also, for those who are interested, we will also try and arrange an opportunity to learn more about the groups that have presented. I was talking with one of the groups that maybe we could do a field trip. That might be a little difficult for North Carolina and Massachusetts, but if people are cabin fever and they really want to do it, hey, we'll figure it out. So there's going to be a lot going on. This is a wonderful opportunity for us to join our hands together, pandemic or no pandemic, to reconnect with Mother Earth, to reconnect with one another, to reconnect with our faith and our various ministries that we pursue, and how we can make a more just society by sharing the abundance that is around us, but doesn't always get into the hands of everybody. So I really want to thank everybody for taking your time. I know after a year of doing Zoom programming, we're all sort of like Zoom fatigued, and we had 70 screens on today, which was fantastic. It really was. And I want to thank everybody for taking the time to do that. And believe me, we will be following up. So don't think that there's not another action. Look for an email from us that will have more about the work days. Look for an email from us about more information. And then let's roll up our sleeves and do the work together. Did I miss anything, Pastor Cavanis, or did I cover it?
We covered it. I just placed, if we don't have your email, if you want to be sure we have it, if you wouldn't mind just placing in the chat. And we will be following up, and also we'll have information also about the Lower Merion Conservancy's pollinator project, which is also very critical as well to this movement around faith, justice, and food, and bringing it all together.
Well, thank you all very much. Greatly appreciate your time. God bless. Continue the wonderful work, all of our panelists, and all of you watching from at home. Go catch up on your hour you lost the other night.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you. Take care.